This is the Solid Signal Podcast for the week of November 5th, 2018. And friends, I am cranky. This is going to be a cranky podcast. Hopefully it's a cranky podcast with a good message, but I can't guarantee that at this point. I will guarantee that it's going to be cranky. Why? Well, first of all, there's some moron outside the blog studios who is apparently thinks that everybody in the neighborhood loves to hear his music and doesn't want to turn it down. This is making me very cranky, but it's not the real reason for my crankiness. The real reason for my crankiness is that I am jet-lagged and tired and a little bit off my game, and I bet you are too. I'm recording this on Monday, and unless you are in one of the very few areas that doesn't do this, you had to set your clock back yesterday morning. Now, there are worse things in the world, obviously, than having to set your clocks back. And I'll admit that it gets easier and easier every year because most of your devices will do it for themselves. All of your computer devices, all of your entertainment devices, even in some cases your car, will do it for itself. I did find that there were still some devices that needed the work. But again, I'm not cranky because I had to go through the physical effort of changing the clocks back. That really isn't it. It's daylight saving time, my friends, and if you've been reading the Solid Signal blog for a number of years, you know I've mentioned this. I mention it every year, twice as a matter of fact, to make sure that everybody knows exactly how unhappy and unsupportive I am of the idea of daylight saving time. First things first, and again, because I am incredibly cranky this morning, it is daylight saving time, my friends, not daylight savings time. I don't know why people say daylight savings time. People used to say savings bank, but nobody even says that anymore. It's daylight saving time. It is the time when you are supposedly saving daylight. You're not savings daylight. That doesn't make any sense. It is daylight saving time. Daylight saving time has a long history in the 20th century. It was implemented in the United States and in Europe several times to try to save energy and to try to improve the experience for rural Americans. The idea was that by shifting the clock around so that more people were out during daylight hours, that you could save electricity and save oil. And if there was, a war on or a bad economy or a foreign country had cut off the supply of oil, I suppose that all made a lot of sense. And today that makes no sense. We are not in a declared war with anybody who requires us to change our clocks twice a year. That's just flat out ridiculous. When it comes to energy efficiency, today's cars are so much more efficient than they ever were. Today's light bulbs are so much more efficient than they ever were. The idea that you're actually saving something measurable by changing the clocks around is just patently absurd and doesn't make any sense at all. The only other argument that I've heard for daylight saving time is people like it when it's light during the summer. Oh, so they don't like it when it's light during the winter? That makes no sense. Frankly, I am a person and I don't like it when it's light out at 20 till 10 and I've decided that it's a work night and I have to get to sleep. My opinion matters, and I suspect there are a lot of other people who would just as happily find that, hey, it's light out when it's light out and it's dark out when it's dark out. More importantly, if you talk about daylight saving time and its effects on the American economy, you have to look at the massive lost productivity on the day right after daylight saving time. You don't need me to quote you numbers. You can find them on Google. But every time there is a change in the clock, there's an increase in car accidents. People don't know exactly how to drive, or they get up too late and they're rushing. there's an increase in workplace fatigue that leads to a nationwide decrease in productivity twice a year for absolutely no reason. And yet, it seems impossible to get rid of daylight saving time. By the time you read this, Californians may or may not have passed what they call Proposition 7, which would give the legislature the right to reform daylight saving time laws, which were put in place in the 1940s. And whether that would mean that the state went on year-round daylight saving time or year-round not daylight saving time, I don't know. What I do know is those folks out in California have a history of doing what they think is best and either leading the country one way or leading the country another way. But they will have decided whether or not to allow their legislature to scrap daylight saving time rules. I don't know if it's going to be good. I don't know if it's going to be bad. Because if you think about it, if California goes off daylight saving time, they become the largest state to do so. And all of a sudden, you don't know what time it is in California. At least in Michigan, you always know when Detroit, Michigan's in the Eastern time zone. So the folks in California, it's 3 hours earlier there. If they scrap daylight saving time rules, who knows what time it's going to be there compared to what time it is in Michigan or the rest of the country or whatever. No, I think that the folks in California may have the right idea, because I hope that everybody scraps daylight saving time rules and we stop messing around the clock for absolutely no reason. But I hope that we do it as a country. I think it would be a rare show of unity if we could just take a look at this and say, that's just flat out ridiculous. There is no reason for it. Oh yeah, well, people like it when it's light out at night. Okay, well, fine. But, people also like it when it's light out in the morning. We're not going to change the rotation of the earth so it can be light out all the time just to make everybody happy. No, let's just have a show of unity and say there just isn't any reason anymore for people in the United States to have daylight saving time imposed upon them or me. Well, I did say this was going to be a cranky podcast, and I think that I've been right there. It's also been an extraordinarily long podcast, and I suppose I should pay the bills. If you still have clocks that don't set yourself, get some new ones over at solidsignal.com. If your phone or your GPS device is having problems figuring out what time it is, get a new one at solidsignal.com. If your router gives you weird trouble around the time of daylight saving and you have to change the clock manually, just get a new one at solidsignal.com. Folks, I will be back with my happy self starting again next week. But in the meantime, think about what I've been ranting about. And if you do agree that daylight saving time, while it is not the most important scourge that we are facing, is a scourge and that we should not have it, then contact your elected representatives, whoever they're going to be in January, because I'm recording this on the day before Election Day, and tell them. Because this would be an easy enough change. We changed the daylight saving time rules not that long ago, only about 15 years ago. Daylight saving time got longer. So we could do it again. We absolutely could. All right. You folks have a great week. I will try to get some coffee, try to shut that guy up who's playing his music too loud outside the blog offices, and I'll talk to you again real soon.